Greetings, mortal. Are you ready to die?
The 90s FPS games. There was something special about these old classic games, from the carnage and mayhem, to the wonderful one-liners from some of the protagonists, to the simplicity of the controls, to the basic story and the wonderful designed and created maps pushing the engines to their absolute limits. So guys, my name is DrAce and I'm going to be showing you my top 10 favourite FPS games from the 1990s. I hope you're prepared for quite the nostalgic trip. So without further ado, let's shake things up and crack on.
Shake it, baby.
So coming in at number 10 we have Hexen, the very first on our list here today, another fantastic Doom engine game, launching 30th of October 1995, seems like a long time ago, but this game is still holding up very well today if you use the SourcePort GZ Doom or something very similar. Now the game for Hexen, for me, was a little bit harder than the other ones because it required a little bit more backtracking, a little bit more understanding and learning of the maps and levels, which I found a little bit difficult for my young mind back in the day, but after appreciating it as I've got older, paying attention to the fantastic voice work and sprites, I really enjoyed my experience, especially recently with Hexen as I really got back into it once again. I did find there was a lot of jump scares, a lot of corridors that really caught you off guard, a lot of traps, a hell of a lot of traps in Hexen that really kept you on your toes. It does have a few small issues like puzzles that are absolutely absurd and deaths that seem unavoidable, but it's still a fantastic game and well deserves number 10 on the list. So now we move on to number 9 on the list, Quake III Arena, launching the 2nd of December 1999, so just barely sticks in as an FPS game from the 90s, and I gotta say, this is amazing. Playing now with a widescreen fix, it is like just playing it back in the day, exactly how I felt like it was. The mayhem, the carnage, the chaos, and of course the fantastically designed maps are just easy to pick up and play and just enjoy the experience just as it was intended many years ago. Whether you're fighting real life opponents or 1,000 bones like you can see on screen right now, it is entirely up to you. This game had creativity, this game had great multiplayer, and it had just a hell of a lot of good, solid fun. I look for a few things when looking for an arena shooter: solid weaponry, great level designs, great characters and sprites, and I tell you what, Quake 3 hits all of those marks with tremendous fashion. Easy to pick up and play, lots of replayability. If you've never played Quake 3 before, then I highly recommend you give it a try because you will not regret this fantastic arena shooter. So now moving across to number 8 on the list, we go back to the very earliest time, the very earliest part of 1990, and that is of course 1992, the 5th of May, for Wolfenstein 3D. Now this is not the most easiest of games to play compared to the other ones because of course we have got used to so much bigger and better things in the terms of quality of life, but you cannot deny the impact that Wolfenstein 3D made upon the gaming genre. We would not have other games that stemmed off from this fantastic title. This is truly the grandfather of FPS games. I highly recommend playing it if you never have. Yes, it's not aged as well as some of the other games on the list, but it's still well worth playing. There's lots of memorable things, being the one-man army of William J. B.J. Blazkowicz fighting against all the Nazis, a premise for me that will never get old. From a Pac-Man level that was in the hidden levels, and then of course many more memorable parts, even fighting Mecha Hitler himself. To me, it is the ultimate boss battle, by far the most iconic battle of the 90s. Defeating Mecha Hitler, seeing him drop to the floor, and even getting an action replay. Can you compare to that? You may have thought that beating Hitler was tongue-in-cheek, then let me show you Shadow Warrior, the epitome of tongue-in-cheek from the 1990s, where nothing is PC, nothing is out of reach, and there is a hell of a lot of carnage and memorable moments. Shadow Warrior was not a game I played during the 90s, but after many years of playing it in the classic Redux, I can honestly say I missed a gem when this game came out on the 13th of May 1997, but I can say I am proud that I have still been able to play it many years before, and I honestly love Shadow Warrior. It is extremely tongue-in-cheek, it is really silly and goofy, but the combat is actually really good. The weaponry is probably by far one of the best set of weapons I've ever seen in a game. From a railgun, from a grenade launcher, to even launching a nuclear missile with your rocket launcher. This game does a hell of a lot of things right and not much wrong. I love the humour, I love the character of Lo Wang, and I could honestly play this game to death. And I did find myself actually playing this a little bit longer than I should. And during so, I actually ended up finding a little bit of an Easter egg that I'd never seen before.
It's down to you and me, Mr. Fly.
So I was idle for a bit too long, and this animation played as he tries to grab a fly with chopsticks. So now number 6 on our list, and I'm guessing that no one's going to disagree that this game belongs in the top 10. I guess the only thing you can disagree with is the position it is in. Quake is a fantastic game. I've just recently played through it once again on Nightmare difficulty with your health maxed out at 50, and I can honestly say it was fantastic. Now Quake came out on the 22nd of June 1996, and unfortunately I didn't actually play it immediately back then, and I don't think I played any of them at launch, but afterwards of playing it and experiencing Quake for the very first time, it was incredible. My PC hardly ran it, but I still very much enjoyed what I could play from it. I don't think I ever finished it, so that was a thing I did when I got a little bit older, but there is just so many memorable moments, from the fear of gaining a shambler to the confidence you gain from picking up a quad damage. This game certainly put me through the emotions, especially during my Nightmare run very recently. But honestly, going back to the way it was back in the 1990s, this was a huge step up from some of the other games at the time, and this was rather impressive. Whether you're playing it for the first time now, or if you have fond memories of Quake, it well deserves number 6 on my list. So from Lovecraft to horror, another fantastic 90s FPS game that, in my opinion, really doesn't get enough love. I didn't even know about this game till maybe a couple of years ago when I first experienced it, and my goodness, this is one of the best build engine games I've ever played, and quite honestly, one of my favourite games of all time. I love the setting. I don't know much about horror films in general, but there is a ton of Easter eggs that even I got the references for, and honestly, I'm disappointed I missed out on its original release, but I think I've made up with it by getting all the achievements on Steam and just generally playing the hell out of this game. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's hard to say, but I want to say that this game has the most character out of all of the games in this list. It's so memorable, it's so unique. From a protagonist that is dark and brooding, but also really maniacal, is absolutely awesome. The weaponry is fantastic. One of the most bizarre weaponry sets out of all of the build engine games and all of FPS games in general. It goes from well beyond your standard shotgun and submachine gun. You go to your flare gun, this Tesla rifle as you can see right now, a pitchfork for melee, and even a voodoo doll. Who comes up with this stuff? The guys at 3D Realms, and it is absolutely awesome. Blood is bursting with atmosphere, personality, and even lots and lots of Easter eggs.
Yes, Johnny.
Now this would be blasphemous to some, but for me this is my choice. Quake 2 is yes indeed ahead of the first Quake game, and yes I know what you're thinking, is he mad? No, I'm not, but I just love Quake 2. From the music, to the weapons, to the strong, to the way the enemies fought back and actually used a little bit of intelligence this time rather than just running at you. Very much enjoy Quake 2 a little bit more. I think the setting and atmosphere, it does remind me a lot more of Doom, but it's just really great. The weapons are much better. There's a lot more variety of weapons, and it is just so good on the higher difficulties. You can feel like an absolute badass when you're running around jumping, strafing, and shooting. Quake 2, just like a lot of the games on this list, does that to perfection, and I absolutely love Quake 2. Coming out on the 9th of December 1997, I do believe I had it at launch or very near to, and I gotta say the experience I had playing that back then, not as quick as I am now of course, but back then it was still just as good as it is right now, and I think that's when the game has aged extremely well. Of course now you've got the RTX version of Quake 2, so if you have it and you want to play it in ray tracing enabled, definitely check out that feature as well. But for now, I digress. Quake 2 coming in at 4th place, could definitely have had a podium spot, but honestly, just the next 3 games are a little teeny bit more special than Quake 2. But honestly, all games on this list are absolutely epic.
Much better.
So after a brief toilet break, it is time to discuss the podium finishes, and Duke Nukem 3D totally deserves a spot on this list. Duke Nukem may be my favourite protagonist of all time. He is cool, he's confident, he's got the swagger, he is just an absolute dude all around. But don't get me wrong, this game isn't about the ultimate Chad Duke Nukem. This is also about the gameplay itself. You take Duke Nukem away from this, it's still a fantastic game. From the interactivity with items around the map, to picking up items and using them, to also tipping strippers and using the bathroom. You can't ask for much more when you want to play a tongue-in-cheek 90s FPS game, and Duke Nukem is quite possibly the king of tongue-in-cheek, the king of humour, and the king of build engine games. Coming out 29th of January 1996, fits perfectly in the middle of our 90s saga, and will only be beaten by 2 other games for my particular top 10 list. How can there possibly be a top 10 FPS list without the inclusion of Doom 2? The Super Shotgun in itself, by its own merits, is enough to put itself on a top 10 list. You could even have full games but just have the Super Shotgun and it would still deserve a spot on anyone's list as far as I'm concerned. But the thing that keeps me coming back to Doom is its simplistic design, excellent levels, excellent sprites, amazing weapons. You can't go wrong with Doom, and it is ultimately the first game you think of when anyone mentions FPS. At least it is for me, whether it's from the 90s or even to modern times. Doom is still the game I think about daily. I think about the soundtrack. I often listen to the soundtrack because the work that these guys did was absolutely fantastic. Doom 2 oozes personality from the enemies to the soundtrack to the weapons. Amazing game, and to think that this game came out in the 10th of October 1994. I was only barely 2 months old at this point when this game came out, and it has still stayed with me forever and ever, and always will do actually. It was one of the very first games I played, and I remember being terrified by a lost soul as it screamed up against the screen. I would have a momentary lapse where I would regain confidence, come back, and hopefully join in on the fun and experience an incredible game that is Doom 2. There is only one game that can beat Doom 2 on this list, so let's find out what DrAce has chosen for his definitive #1 spot on the top 10 90s FPS games. What game could possibly beat Doom 2? Well, I tell you, Doom 1. I absolutely love Doom 1, and then we've got to give credit because at the end of the day, Doom 2 is basically just Doom 1 but with a super shotgun. Yes, there are different design levels, and yes, there's different enemies in the game, but I love Doom 1. I think Doom 1's simplicity is what brings me coming back to it over and over again. Yes, you dearly miss the super shotgun, but the first game was just so iconic. It is the start of the Doom franchise. How can I not put it as #1? And rather out the 2 games, I do rather enjoy Doom 1 a little bit more. I prefer the episodic selection rather than actually just playing through it in a whole 32 levels. I kind of enjoy that idea with the older games where episodes were a thing. I will also add that I do prefer the music for Doom 1 over than Doom 2. I think the atmosphere was more sort of badass compared to Doom 2's sort of atmospheric. I do very much enjoy both games, don't get me wrong. It was extremely difficult to choose one over the other, but Doom 1 just has where my heart is. It's just, I played it on everything, from PlayStation to Xbox to Nintendo Switch to the PS5 now, to everywhere. I continue to play Doom, even on the go in the past and playing it on mobile. Doom, for me, will be always the favourite game in this 90s FPS list, and may even be my favourite game of all time. But that is for another video, another day. But upon the note, guys, thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you agree or disagree with the list, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm more than happy to have a good old chinwag in the comment section. But upon the note, guys, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys, and ciao for now. Oh, hi! Didn't quite see you there. Good to see you're still here. If this video didn't quite set your appetite, then why not watch some more DrAce content by clicking the video shown on screen now. Furthermore, if you would like to follow me on social media, you can do so now with the links down in the description. Consider subscribing so you don't miss a single DrAce video.